Besama Ab, Weld, Mefes Gadus, Adawamlak, Amen. Besama Ab, Weld, Mefes Gadus, Adawamlak, Amen. Besama Ab, Weld, Mefes Gadus, Adawamlak, Amen. Yes, good morning. I pray everyone is well. Um, yes, we are in the middle of this quite epic story of the reconciliation or the reuniting between Joseph and his brothers, and they still don't know that Joseph is their brother. They just see him as one of the leaders in Egypt during a great famine. Um, so, in the last chapter, we saw Joseph accuse Benjamin of stealing a silver cup, and they all came back to Joseph's palace, where he then confronted them, and they said, "We are innocent, but don't take Benjamin, take me instead." And particularly Judah said that. So we're kind of in the middle of this kind of cliffhanger, this very kind of tense moment. So I will continue with the reading. Give thanks. And Joseph had not been able to refrain himself before all those standing by him, and he calls, "Put out every man from me." And no man has stood with him when Joseph makes himself known to his brothers. And he gives forth his voice in weeping, and the Egyptians hear, and the house of Pharaoh hears. And Joseph says to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father yet alive?" And his brothers have not been able to answer him, for they have been troubled at his presence. And Joseph says to his brothers, "Please come near to me." And they come near, and he says, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be grieved, nor let it be displeasing in your eyes that you sold me here. For God has sent me before you to preserve life, because these 2 years the famine is in the heart of the land, and yet 5 years remain it, and there is neither ploughing nor harvest. And God sends me before you to place a remnant of you in the land, and to give life to you by a great escape. And now you have not sent me here. And he sets me for a father to Pharaoh, and for lord to all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father. Then you have said to him, Thus said your son Joseph, God has set me for Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, and do not stay. And you have dwelt in the land of Goshen, and has been near me, you and your sons, and your sons' sons, and your flock, and your herd, and all that you have. And I have nourished you there. And yet are 5 years of famine, lest you become poor, you and your household, and all that you have. And behold, your eyes are seeing, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that is in my mouth, which is speaking to you. And you have declared to my father all my glory in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you have hurried, and you have brought down my father here. And he falls on the neck of his brother Benjamin, and weeps. And Benjamin has wept on his neck, and he kisses all his brothers and weeps over them. And afterwards his brother has spoken with him. And the sound has been heard in the house of Pharaoh, saying, The brothers of Joseph have come. And it is good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh says to Joseph, Say to your brothers, This you do, load your beasts and go, enter the land of Canaan, and take your father and your household, and come to me. And I give to you the good of the land of Egypt, and you eat the fat of the land. Indeed, you have been commanded, this you do, take for yourself out of the land of Egypt wagons for your infants and for your wives, and you have brought your father and come, and your eye has no pity on the vessels, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours, and the son of Israel, and do so. And Joseph gives wagons but to them by the command of Pharaoh, and he gives to them the provision for the way. To all of them have been given, to each changes of garments, and to Benjamin he has given 300 pieces of silver and 3 changes of garments. And to his father he has sent thus 10 donkeys carrying out the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys carrying grain and bread, even food for his father for the way. And he sends his brothers away, and they go. And he says to them, do not be angry in the way. And they go out of Egypt and come to the land of Canaan, to their father Jacob. And they declare to him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, that he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart ceases, for he has not given credence to them. And they speak to him all the words of Joseph, which he has spoken to them. And he sees the wagons which Joseph has sent to carry him away. And the spirit of their father Jacob lives. And Israel says, enough, my son Joseph is alive. I go and see him before I die. For these few words I give thanks, blessed love. So, again, a happy chapter, quite an uplifting chapter after the tense chapters that have come before. So in this, after that cliffhanger where Joseph was accusing Benjamin of stealing the cup, and of course Benjamin didn't steal anything, Joseph planted it there to see how the rest of the brothers were going to react. So that was yesterday's chapter. And today we see Joseph, he can't contain himself anymore. It says at the beginning, it says Joseph is not being able to refrain himself before those standing by him. So he kind of just had to let it out because it's getting too tense for him. And he says to his brothers, I am your brother, I am Joseph, and don't be worried. And they're all stunned. And Joseph then says, I love you. Don't be worried. Don't feel guilty. You sold me into slavery, but this was all God's plan, and God put me here for a reason. And the reason God put me here was to save life now, because there's a famine. So he says that God put him there to save the people of Egypt during the famine, because he had that ingenious idea that put him in that position, but also to save his own family and his father. So he then offers the brothers to say, go back, go and get dad, go and get your wives and all your servants and all your animals, bring them back, and I will allow you to live in quite a fertile land of Egypt so you can escape the famine. And he tells them that there's 5 more years of the famine to go, so they need to leave Canaan and come to Egypt, and that this is where they'll be safe. So he says he was put here for this plan. And don't forget, this is God's nation on earth. It's from the line of Judah that King David's going to be descendant, that Jesus Christos is going to be descendant. So the protection of this family is actually paramount and is in God's interest. So Joseph understands this bigger plan. He might not obviously understand the lineage, but he does understand that that family is, if you like, in the glory of God. And he also says to them, and this is very poignant, he says, do not be angry on your way, on your journey. Don't be arguing amongst yourselves. Don't start getting into, you did this and you should be blamed, and blaming Judah. He says, don't get angry on the way back. Just go back in peace, collect your father and bring them back. The other dynamic of this is Pharaoh, because Joseph's crying was so loud that the servants heard Joseph crying, as well as Pharaoh himself, got word of what was happening. But it says it was pleasing in the eyes of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh then goes to the brothers and said, and Joseph, and supports Joseph's proposal to bring the family back. And he gives him more wagons, gives him more food, says, bring your father back and you'll be safe in Egypt. And don't forget that God blessed the house of the Pharaoh as well, because that's where Joseph was living. So this is how blessed Joseph was. He's not just blessing and protecting Joseph. God has also blessed the whole of that kind of kingdom, if you like, in Pharaoh's house, because that's where Joseph was. So even though the Pharaoh may not have been worshipping the one God, he still blessed that space, because inside it was Joseph. So now the brothers have gone back to the dad, and Jacob is incredibly happy, and he says, let me go back and see him before I die. So it's a real story of strong family bonds, family loyalty, reconciliation, and we saw how that was leading up, where first of all Joseph was very hesitant, testing his brothers, seeing if they'd changed, but then it got to the point where, he's like, no, they've changed, but I still love them. They're still my family, and blood is thicker than water. That kind of phrase, really. So yeah, so I got something on my mouth there. So yeah, really interesting chapter. Quite beautiful reconciliation. We've seen some very violent incidents um, in previous chapters, and actually, this is much more of a kind of uplifting chapter with positive kind of message coming through it. Really, so in a way, same message as yesterday, the day before. Really, it's about giving people the opportunity for showing they've changed, opening the door for reconciliation, keeping the door open for forgiveness. And really, forgiveness, I think, is a message we're going to see throughout the Bible in terms of, you know, um, one of God's principal kind of aims to us as humans is being able to be strong enough to forgive. And we definitely see that with Jacob, with all the power that he had. He was literally in charge of the food during a famine, and his brothers who sold him into slavery come to him because they are hungry. And rather than use his power to, to seek revenge on them, he uses his power to reconcile the family and to save his father and all of them and God's nation. Without Joseph, there would be no King David, there would be no Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ. Do you know what I mean? Like, Joseph is someone who is responsible for saving that lineage. So his role cannot be underestimated, really. Um, so yeah, there's a lot there, but I think the message is very clear. So God willing, have a blessed day. Um, Enjoying this process. So thank you anyone that's listening to this and staying with this, and I look forward to the journey. Yeah, going forward. It's going to be soon 50 days. I'm now chapter 46, so that's 46 days been doing this, and I'm loving every minute of it. So give thanks, blessed love. Have a blessed day.